It was one of the most unprofessional displays of political interviewing I have ever seen in my almost 40 years in the media and communications business. The ABC's 7:30 host Sarah Ferguson and former National Party leader and Deputy Prime Minister Barnaby Joyce, following his announcement that he was leaving the party and he might run with another party or as an independent in 2028. As usual, Ferguson's political bias was clear from the start.
You obviously admire Pauline Hanson enough to consider defecting to One Nation. What is it that she does better than the National Party?
Well, I think more importantly than that is to say to the people of New England and also the upper hunter how it's now announcing that I will no longer contest the seat. What an incredible honour it was to represent these people. I'll continue to do that till election day, and I apologise for any disruption.
Yes, having got that out of the way, to the point. Yes, thank you.
And going to the point that you brought up.
For too long, the ABC's justified its almost sometimes bullying style tactics as assertive, strong journalism. We're pushing back, they say. But it almost always seems to come from presenters of the left when they're interviewing politicians on the political right. And since the ABC has almost zero right-wing presenters, that would be just about every interview that the ABC does these days. But there is a difference between pushing back respectfully against a politician who's not answering a question and just attacking one who is actually talking about the issues that really matter to the audience, when all you want to talk about is the political games. Barnaby stood his ground and made his very important argument about net zero's real impact on the people of Australia very clear.
I've only made a decision that my participation in the National Party at a federal level is not appropriate considering the hurt that my electorate is going through, first and foremost because of the ridiculous policy, which is net zero, which will have no effect on the weather, but is completely desecrating our landscape, dividing our communities, impoverishing poor people, deindustrialising our nation. And on the premise of that, which I imagine some of your million viewers might not understand, when you live with that, it is absolutely prescient in everything you do and how you approach that. And we have not moved far enough to get away from this policy so that we can create some sort of restitution for the damage it has done.
All right, let me just come back, if I can, bring you back to the question, Barnaby Joyce, because you've made this point about net zero many times.
That is what's really important, and it's good to make it again.
Point made. All right, fair enough. How long have you been speaking? How long have you been speaking to Pauline Hanson about the possibility of you joining One Nation?
Well, I'm not sort of going to go through that. As I've said,
it's a very simple question, Barnaby Joyce. It's a very simple question. How long have you been speaking to Pauline Hanson about the prospect of joining One Nation?
And this idea that I'm in continual communication with Pauline Hanson is absurd. I can be completely and utterly honest. The last time I spoke to Pauline in person was, I think, down in Canberra. I don't know how long that went for, maybe 20 minutes. And then last night, because we seem to be doing this via media, I did ring her and said, well, right, let's take out the middleman and let's talk to each other direct and just say hello. And
did you discuss details of
those discussions?
This is a simple question.
Go through the details of those
for the sake of the voters of New England.
It's a simple question, but I'll give the answer that I wish, okay? It's a simple question, but I'm not going to start discussing private discussions with other people. Otherwise, they're no longer, Sarah, private discussions.
Have you discussed running on the Senate ticket for One Nation in New South Wales?
As I've said, Sarah, I'm not going to discuss private discussions, Sarah. And I don't want this to descend into sort of Trump-Zelensky Oval Office scenario, but I'm just not going to discuss private discussions.
There's so many ways I could go with that statement, but I won't.
He isn't going to talk about it. He wants to talk about the real issues that are affecting Australians, not the issues that the ABC inner city lovies want to prioritise about politics. You should do your job. It actually got to the point where Barnaby started mocking Sarah.
Let me put the question to you in a different way. It looks clear that the National Party looks set to drop net zero before the end of the year. That's what you say you want.
That's good.
So why quit now if the Nationals are about to deliver exactly what you want?
That's really good. If we get out of net zero, that's a really, really good thing. And it's not a good thing for me. It's a good thing for our nation. It's an incredibly good thing for the people of New England.
Would it be enough? Would it be enough for you, Barnaby Joyce, to remain in the Nationals?
I'm not going to go through hypotheticals, because right as we speak, Sarah, tonight, net zero is a policy of the Labor Party, the Greens, the Liberal Party and the National Party.
Barnaby Joyce, I think take the audience seriously, take the viewers seriously.
Sarah
you know
Ferguson,
perfectly well.
I can't be any more serious than what I am.
You know perfectly well that the National Party
Sarah
is
Ferguson,
close.
I'm being totally serious with you.
You know that the National Party is close to announcing its policy, that it will change its policy on net zero, exactly what you've been asking for 4 months.
Sarah,
so would that be enough for you to remain in the National Party? It's a pretty simple question, Barnaby Joyce.
Sarah, on behalf of your million viewers, and congratulations, I will make a statement about that when that happens. If that happens, it hasn't happened, Sarah, unless you're saying that are you absolutely certain it's going to happen, Sarah?
I think your contacts in the National Party are better than mine.
I doubt that very much at the moment. So what are your views?
Well, why don't we move on? We'll take this question in a different way.
Ouch. That backfired, didn't it? Joining me in the studio today is another former Liberal National Coalition politician and Senator, Gerard Rennick. Gerard, thank you very much for your time. You're now the founder, of course, of the People First Party. What did you make of all that, first of all?
Well, look, I mean, if you're going to go on to the ABC and do an interview, you got to, and you're a conservative politician, you got to expect to be beat up. I actually thought that last questioning from Sarah Ferguson about, well, if the Nationals drop net zero, will you stay in the National Party? I thought that was a reasonable question. To be honest.
I mean, there are a few reasonable questions in there.
Yeah.
It's just that she just stuck on the stuff that was like, just move on. I mean, he's not going to talk about the issues.
Well, the early stuff about where Barnaby was at with Pauline Hanson. Yet again, Barnaby could have come out and killed that by saying, I'm not joining One Nation, full stop. I mean, you can't say that.
But he's still in discussions, so he's sort of said that.
Well,
I'm still in discussions. I'm not going to talk about it. Let's move on.
Well, I wouldn't go on media if you hadn't made your mind up, because they're going to want a decision, right? So let's just stick to the net zero stuff first, right? Now, Barnaby has been leader of the National Party. The National Party has been very good to Barnaby. He wants to get rid of... Now, let's not forget, Barnaby was the leader of the National Party when Morrison signed up to net zero, right? So there were 3 people in the party room that day when we were told by Morrison that we weren't going to have a vote on it that stood up and opposed it. Myself, Matt Canavan and George Christensen, right? Andrew Wallace, to his credit, asked if we were going to get a vote, and Scott Morrison said, no, it's not. It's a decision of the executive, i.e. the ministers. So I'll give Andrew Wallace credit for that. But Barnaby said nothing then. Right, so and a lot of people now are coming out in the coalition going, oh, we don't want net zero. Yeah, Andrew Hastie's another one. Right, where were they 4 years ago? October 21 it was. So it's 4 years ago this month, as a matter of fact, when Morrison signed up to net zero, and they didn't do anything then. So the question I put to Barnaby, and he's a friend of mine, I like him, he's been good to me. Why didn't you take the Nats away from the Liberals then? So you coming out 4 years later and saying you're leaving the Nationals because you didn't actually, we don't want net zero. Well, I can tell you that the view of the regions has never changed. They were against net zero back in 2019 when I was part of the coalition that got into, had a sweeping victory over Bill Shorten in 2019. And that's why our opposition to net zero was why I became a senator. Right? Because the opposition to it was that strong in regional Queensland, thanks to the brilliant work of Matt Canavan and George Christensen. Remember when Bob Brown did his convoy up there and he just got smashed? Okay, that's why I'm a senator, right? And for Morrison to then backflip on what I call was a core promise. I mean, sometimes you have to change things because things different. But
something as fundamental as that, as core as that.
Sarah Ferguson, in my view, put a decent question to Barnaby. If they drop net zero, will you stay in the party? He should have answered that question, right? He owes that to the party because the party has made him leader. He is now criticising the very thing he didn't actually stand up against when he was the leader of the party. So,
fair enough. Let's have a little listen, a bit more of it.
You told your branch members you had no choice but to step down because your relationship with David Littleproud had broken down. I just wanted to know when that happened, because a few weeks ago on this program you said your issues were not with David Littleproud, but they were about net zero. So what happened with David Littleproud in the meantime?
I think it's fair enough to say that we all know that during the election I was asked to stay in New England. I think that everybody knows that.
Well, I don't think the National Party accept that, but anyway.
Well, they do. Who doesn't expect?
Carry on.
Who's your source there?
I'm trying to understand
Who's
what happened in your relationship.
Who's your source?
I'm the one asking the questions,
You've got to be straight
Barnaby.
now. You've got to be straight because you always ask for me. So who's your source, Sarah?
So when did this final breakdown in the relationship with David Littleproud happen? Because a few weeks ago on this programme, you said it's not about David Littleproud, it's about net zero. So if it's about David Littleproud, when did the relationship break down?
Well, as I was starting to answer before you interrupted me, we all know that at the time of the campaign, I was asked to stay in New England because I did not reflect what the National Party believed in. Now, of course, I took that as a little bit of an affront because I think I actually do know what regional people believe in, and our vote here in New England actually went up as opposed to every electorate around us.
Barnaby Joyce, these are all things that happened. These are all things that happened. These are all things that happened weeks ago.
These are all things that happened. Let me answer the question.
These are things in the past.
This is sounding very Trumpian, not by you. Very Trumpian.
That's a first. These are all things.
I just want to hear a sensible discussion about net zero policy, or I want to hear. I don't care about the political machinations. It's frustrating. I mean, but anyway, your thoughts on that, on the net zero question again, though, and the way that it played out. I mean, you're saying it was politically difficult at the time. Obviously, it was core to the Queensland sentiment, but the other members of the party or the coalition felt that it wasn't. There wasn't enough support for it in other parts of Australia, and so they went ahead. But they may not have been making the right decision at the time.
Well, the moderates basically lobbied Morrison to sign up to net zero in order to save their seats in the wealthier, affluent suburbs of Sydney and Melbourne. Now, that actually backfired on them. So when Morrison made that decision, he didn't do that decision on conviction or because he thought it was the right thing to do for the people. He did it because he thought it was the right thing to do for the Liberal Party. He thought this would help save the Liberal Party's seats. Well, that was proven to be wrong because they actually won those seats back in 2019 when they opposed net zero. Right, so their strategy of adopting net zero has not only been wrong morally and ethically because it's not the right thing to do, it was wrong politically because since they've signed up to net zero, they've lost an enormous number of seats. 30-odd seats? It's just astounding the number of seats they've lost.
So why do they persist with it?
Well, because they're controlled, as we've said earlier, they're controlled by the party apparatchiks who are basically influenced by lobbyists to keep, because there's a lot of money in this net zero racket.
We talked about that on the show a week or so ago about the amount of money that's coming in, particularly from foreign bodies as well.
Well, directly, indirectly,
and local.
Yeah, and the bureaucrats, of course, get influenced because they go overseas into these foreign bodies as well, and then they're the ones that come back, and they drive much of the decision making. Most of these ministers, I mean, Chris Bowen. I mean, I don't need to explain to your listeners just how intelligent that bloke is, or how his lack of ability to comprehend complex problems. So he would be entirely influenced by both the lobbyists and, of course, the bureaucrats in his own department, who are obviously swayed by the foreign influence inside the bureaucracy.
You've spent a lot of time in Canberra, Gerard. I mean, how bad is this problem of the shadow government of bureaucrats running this country, and we're not having enough control of the ministers are not representing the people? They're supposed to be there as our representatives to keep to keep the bureaucrats in line, but we seem to have a situation where it's real Prime Minister stuff, if you remember the old TV show, right, where the bureaucrats are running the government and the ministers are being controlled and managed.
Yes, it's that bad that it's destroying the country. And this is why we need... It's interesting. There's a current debate on about having more politicians in Canberra. Now, I'm probably going to upset a lot of your listeners by saying this, but I actually agree with that on the basis that for every extra politician you put in, you knock out...
Get rid of 10 bureaucrats.
100. Yeah. Get rid of 1,000 bureaucrats, right? And the other thing is it's often put to me that we should have term limits on politicians. Well, I'm not against that, but if you're going to do that, you've got to actually have term limits on bureaucrats, and they've got to be shorter than the term limit on the politician, because the bureaucrats, and many listeners I'm sure also watch myself in estimates, these guys know they can outlast me, and they have, right? They've won because I'm no longer there putting it to them, and I've never got into a position where I could become a minister.
So they just delay.
I'll take
that question on notice. I'll come back to you in a few years.
Most of the people that become ministers are yes men, right? They're not no men, right? And this is the problem. The no men get filtered out. You need no men becoming ministers who then say to the bureaucrats, no, we're not going to do that. But the other thing is, it's not just a shadow bureaucracy. It's the shadow government isn't just a bureaucracy, it's the vested interests. Now, there was an interesting piece a few years ago whereby a bloke by the name of Scott Briggs, who was a lobbyist, and I think I'll stand to be corrected on this, was Scott Morrison's chief of staff. He also, he was in communications with a bloke by the name of Mike Pizzullo, right, who I think was in Home Affairs, or one of those departments. And there was very little, I think Pizzullo lost his job over it. I'll stand to be corrected on this. But there was a really important note in that, was what was a lobbyist doing having the phone number of a top-level bureaucrat? And so the bureaucrats are also, there's a revolving door of bureaucrats with the corporate sector as well. So you've got, and this is what, I talk about people first. We want to promote the individual and the families and basically stand up to the uncontrolled or unrestrained or unaccountable power of the institutions, whether it's big government or big corporations, or big super funds or big media. And this is the real battle. It's not left versus right. It's top versus, the establishment, and the elites in the establishment versus, the battlers who pay their tax.
Yeah, exactly. All right, mate. Thanks very much. We'll come back in a moment. We're going to talk some more. We're going to take a look at Trump and Albo and Rudd and see what happened there in a moment. A great way to support the other side is to support our sponsors like SmartKits Australia, the best supplier of do-it-yourself prefab home renovation kits. And it's not just carports. SmartKits do decks, patios and pergolas, flyover roofs and insulated roofing too. All prefabricated, fully engineered and delivered anywhere in Australia. And if you're not too handy, they'll install it for you too. Get onto it. smartkits.com.au. That was a segment clip from our weekly Friday night news show, The Other Side, which you can watch in full by simply going to YouTube and searching up The Other Side Australia. Then you'll find our full shows playlist. You can also find all of our full shows and our segments on our own website, othersidetv.com.au. That's othersidetv.com.au. Help us build a whole new Aussie media by joining us over there and signing up for the exclusive side.